I can show you lots of these, but I had a post on Instagram that came through, and I screenshotted it because it was a woman who was very proud of herself transitioning to be a man. And it showed her before and it showed her after. You would not know that that was a woman. She'd done all the surgeries. She had all the male body parts. She was a man. And I thought to myself, one of the many reasons I voted against it is when I go to Lava Hot Springs, do I want that man changing with my 17-year-old daughter? We are often more concerned about, when we had younger kids, more concerned about our boys going into a men's bathroom without my wife when I wasn't around. Because men are just as dirty to little boys as they are to girls and women. This bill didn't protect them. When you also look at the exceptions, one of the exceptions was dire need. So if you are in dire need, you can use whatever bathroom is available to you. Who decides whether or not you're in dire need? Is a police officer supposed to go check the toilet? Oh wait, you flushed it. How are you supposed to do that? And so again, talking to the sheriff, they said, look, if somebody calls and says that there's a man in the woman's bathroom and I show up, I'm going to say, why are you in the bathroom? And they're going to say, I was in dire need. Well, okay. So all we did is took a police officer off the street. So now he didn't pull over the car that's transporting fentanyl across the state lines. He didn't answer a domestic violence call to protect a woman who's being beaten by her husband or boyfriend because he was busy at the Texas Roadhouse asking a man who had diarrhea whether or not why he was in the women's bathroom. And I will tell you from personal experience, I have gone to a bathroom with a stall and a urinal. So this would qualify because it's a multi-use bathroom, and both were occupied, and I had to go. So if I went into the women's bathroom because it wasn't occupied and came out, and some Karen says, hey, police, I just saw a man come out of the women's bathroom, and now I'm sitting with my family having dinner, and guess who shows up? The police. And she points me out. And now I've got to answer in the Texas Roadhouse in front of everybody that I was in dire need. It was the biggest loophole in the world. You want to be a perp and you want to go into a women's bathroom and you want to record things and you want to do bad stuff, you just have dire need. No problem. It was a bad bill.
Wow. That logic is all over the map. So let's start right at the beginning. First of all, a woman cannot become a man. You can have all the hormone treatments you want, you can have all the surgeries that you want, but a woman can never have male body parts. You can only create the appearance of the opposite sex. You can never make a woman a man or vice versa. So let's just start right there. We can tell what a woman is. Now, let's take another little baby step. Since we know that there are women and that there are men and that they're not interchangeable, do we think that we should have sex-specific spaces? Is that a good idea? I think that's a good idea. So let's go from there to the next logical fallacy, which is this idea that if the bill doesn't stop every kind of perpetration, the bill's no good. So because some men might perpetrate against a little boy and this particular bill won't stop every kind of harm, the bill's worthless. Well, that's not logical at all. The question still is there a benefit to having sex-separated spaces? And the easy answer is yes, there is. So then we go from that logical fallacy to the idea that the exceptions in the bill made it useless. All right. So first of all, if a police officer comes and they're called to come, they don't just hang out at the bathroom all the time waiting for someone to walk into the wrong bathroom. But if a police officer is called because someone is in the wrong bathroom, that police officer is not the one that has to decide whether the exception exempts them from being responsible for that behavior. They issue a citation. And we have a judicial system so that a judge can make that decision if there's a question. It's not up to the police officer. The reasonable exceptions are there so that a judge could say, I understand that you were in the wrong bathroom, but I'm not going to charge you for that. I'm not going to cite you for that, I'm not going to convict you of that misdemeanor crime because you met one of these exceptions. And they'll ask questions like, were you really in dire need? How do we know? Was there another bathroom available or was there not? And they'll ask those questions, and a judge would make that decision. A police officer doesn't make that decision. But then we go completely to the opposite extreme from saying that these exceptions make the bill worthless to saying that the exceptions are the problem. And so now, all of a sudden, because there's an exception here and he uses the exception, now if he's sitting at Texas Roadhouse and the police come in, now it's a problem that he has to be asked about the exception publicly, which I don't believe would happen either. Beyond that, now we take another leap, and I'm trying to think of the last one. We've been through so many variations on this. There was one more. Yeah, so I remember what the last one was, and that is this idea that if we add one more thing that we are going to expect our police officers to protect, that nothing else is going to get done. The reality is that if we pass this law, it will probably get used rarely. But when it does get used, it's going to be very important. And so we don't have this all or nothing kind of reasoning in real life situations. We recognize that there's give and take, but we protect the important things. And this one should make the list. So one thing that's interesting, I guess, is that if any excuse will do, there are a lot of them. But we've kind of looked at this from all different angles, and the bottom line is whether you think that it was perfect or not, it was the right thing to do. And we need to protect girls and women in private spaces.
In 2024, when I ran the first time, there was an article that came out that said from 2017 to 2024, the state of Idaho had spent $11 million defending and fighting lawsuits of legislation that we had passed as a legislature. I promised at that point that I was not going to bring legislation or encourage legislation that we knew was going to be challenged in court and cost you, the taxpayer, who knows how much money. For me, that's personal. That's important because those are our tax dollars that need to be spent wisely. So when a bill this year came forward, the headline was, "Keep men out of girls' bathrooms." Well, I don't want men in girls' bathrooms. But when I read the bill and I talked to my Sheriff Gardner, and we discussed it, it became clear that it was unenforceable and that it was most likely going to be challenged in court. So among other reasons that I didn't vote for that bill, I didn't vote for it because I wanted to protect you, the taxpayers, from frivolous lawsuits for irresponsible legislation. That legislation could have been fixed that session. It could have been adjusted, it could have been changed, and it probably would have been okay, and I would have probably voted for it. But that's not what the sponsors wanted to do. They wanted the headline. They wanted the aha and the wow moment. And I'm not going to play those games. So today, what happened? The ACLU announced that they are suing the state of Idaho over the bathroom bill. I just don't know what else to say. I'm not going to vote on legislation that we know is bad legislation. Let's fix it, make it right the first time, because that's responsible governance, and that's what I'll do.
All right, I'm going to work backwards a little bit with this one. So did we hear there at the end the way that we just assumed that we know the motives of the bill sponsors and that the bill sponsors have some untoward motives of just making a headline and no real intention of protecting women? If you do that in the legislature, you get gavelled down. And if you keep doing it, you get sent out of the room. So that is not a great way to address an issue. Beyond that, on this issue, in our system of government, we have a separation of powers. And in the legislature, we have the people's representatives, and their job is to write the law and to define the things that are important to us and that we want to protect. And we do have a responsibility to be good stewards of public dollars. That's important. But the purpose of government is to secure our rights. And part of those rights include privacy, dignity, and safety for women in private spaces. So the way the system is designed to work is that the people's representatives should define how we protect privacy, safety, and dignity in these spaces. Then the executive branch is responsible to enforce it, and the judicial branch gets the opportunity to question it if someone brings a question. That's the way the system works. So if we say, if anybody might have a question, we don't want the judicial branch to do their job, we're not willing to fund that, so we're not going to take action as the people's representatives. Essentially what we've done is we've abdicated our responsibility to be a voice for our constituents to the courts. And we've said whatever the judges want to do, we'll just give it to them up front. And we're not even going to have the discussion. And I think that's a tragedy. So, first of all, the priority should be to protect fundamental rights. Then we take care of fiscal responsibilities. We don't have to pick and choose.